Hello, Bobby and Jessie. Welcome to Mind, Body, Spirit Summit 2018.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Hello.
I'm
us.
super excited you guys are here. I get to see you on
Absolutely.
Skype like before I actually see you in person these days.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
know. True.
So I'm super excited about everything we're going to talk about. They are both amazing friends of mine, as well as incredibly brilliant strength coaches and work with amazing athletes. So I'm going to read a little bit about each of them. I took their massive, amazing bios and condensed them, but you guys can read more about them later. So Jessie Dethomasis graduated from, is it SUNY, Cortland?
SUNY.
Portland.
SUNY.
SUNY.
SUNY. I
State
was like,
University of New
Sunny.
York.
Oh, there we go. Cortland with a bachelor's in economics. After working in finance for 4 years, she decided to pursue her passion for sports performance and athletics and became a certified strength and conditioning coach. Jessie specializes in structural balance, strength and conditioning, speed development, sports nutrition, and body composition improvement. Combining specific principles with practical application, she works with a variety of athletes that have included hockey, football, soccer, track and field, gymnastics, figure skating. I didn't know about that. That's cool. And dancers to improve their speed and power output. Bobby Dethomasis has been working as a strength and conditioning coach athletic trainer since 2004. Bobby has been continuously improving his skill set as an athletic trainer and strength coach by regularly attending certification classes as well as informational courses. His specialties include improving sport-specific strength and conditioning, speed, power and quickness development, athletic rehabilitation, and sports nutrition. He's worked with numerous elite athletes, including NFL and collegiate football players, major and minor league and collegiate baseball players, NHL, AHL, and collegiate hockey players and collegiate lacrosse players. Well, that's cool. Bobby has also worked with several Olympic athletes who have competed in wrestling and long track speed skating, including a silver medalist in the 2010 Winter Games in Vancouver. They started Performance Training Systems in the fall of 2011 and opened their own facility in 2013 in January, which I got to be a part of, which was super exciting.
Was
So congratulations, guys, on all of your achievements thus far.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very nice intro.
That was very nice.
Yeah, did you guys like listening to yourselves about yourselves? You're like, yes, I
You
have
guys
all done
sound
all those
much
things.
better than we
I
really
think we
are.
actually are. Absolutely.
It's super cool though that you guys both sort of like specifying different things. Like it sounds like more of the, but I don't know, because Jessie, you do a lot with racing, so there is a lot of power and speed in the stuff that you train your athletes for. So I don't know, I think a great way to start would be, how did you guys both get into strength training and that moment where you knew like, yeah, we've got to create this and do this on our own and build something great?
Want to start?
No, you can start and then I'll.
Okay, yeah. So my background as a Division III low-level collegiate football player kind of, set the groundwork for, I guess, my obsession with strength and conditioning and human physiology and performance enhancement. And, during high school and college, strength training was such a big part of my athletic development. And I think even probably more specifically, I was very fortunate for the most part to never really have any major acute injuries. However, I did notice that there was a pretty significant correlation with guys that I played with that weren't necessarily quite as dedicated to their training program and their susceptibility to injury, and obviously the effect on performance and those sorts of things. I went to undergrad school, got my degree in athletic training, which was a bit more clinical in that I was dealing more with the kind of assessment evaluation of orthopedic sports-related injuries, but always really had a passion for more kind of performance enhancement, strength and conditioning, and those sorts of things. So it was really when I kind of realized how big of an impact it made on myself, but also realizing too how many athletes, unfortunately, don't necessarily receive the proper guidance from a training standpoint, from a standpoint of, kind of limiting their susceptibility to injuries. And I think that with the proper type of preparation that, an athlete can have a very long, successful career and really limit their potential for major debilitating injuries. And that was really the driving force behind why I kind of wanted to get into the field to help, people of all ages and different backgrounds, but most specifically athletes and really specifically young athletes. And even more specifically than that, the ones that I've seen that haven't gotten proper guidance and maybe have battled with some injuries. And it's really my passion to try and help them, get them healthy, and then get them back to the position where they can compete at a high level again.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Going into that a little bit more, when you talk about the proper training and you're getting some of these athletes that haven't had it at all, what do you see as like the biggest downfall? Are they lifting way too heavy and poor range of movement, or is it the movements are wrong and not like, what is it that you see most often that hasn't been helping them or hurting them?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely dependent on the sport in which they come from. You definitely notice patterns, though, especially when athletes start to get to kind of the higher levels. You see that for professional hockey players, for instance, a lot of strength and conditioning coaches have a very high emphasis on their quote unquote conditioning, and have a tendency to spend a lot of time on their more aerobic training and their high lactate training, and really de-emphasize something that I think is super important, and their strength, their power development. And by doing that and keeping their training somewhat relatively one-sided, in that they do a lot of their kind of endurance and conditioning training and really kind of neglect the strength training, I think it not only has a very significant impact on their performance, but I think it also, even more specifically, has a huge impact on their potential to get injured. And hockey players are very susceptible to lower body injuries. Groin injuries are super common amongst hockey players. And I think a big part of that is probably because a lot of them are putting themselves in very compromising positions while they skate, and their bodies just aren't able to withstand the stress just because they're not strong enough, And I think that's where a lot of these hip and groin injuries in hockey players come from. Then on the other side of the coin, you get football players that spend almost their entire time just lifting heavy weights through a relatively shortened range of motion, and they have a huge level of injury rates. And I think a lot of that is probably because football players have a tendency to lift such heavy weights, but kind of limit their exposure to a wide range of exercises. And as soon as they find themselves in a situation where they put a joint in a position that it hasn't necessarily developed strength, right, that's when injuries occur, So it's definitely, it's dependent on the sport, but you definitely notice patterns the more you kind of expose yourself from people from different sports.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So say you guys get an athlete who, might have an injury, but also wants to up their game. They've heard good things about other athletes that you've previously trained. When they come into your facility, talk to me a little bit about what you take them through to kind of assess like where they're at and where you need to go with them.
You want to take that?
Yeah, I'll take over on that one. So when someone, an athlete, or even if it's, general population, someone coming in, we put them through a pretty in-depth evaluation. We first start with just a general medical history and their goals. And then we kind of take them out on the floor and look at some movements where some imbalances might be. If it is an athlete, we do get some, power output related tests, simple vertical jump, broad jump, maybe even a penta jump. If the athlete's injured, obviously depending on what the injury is, we modify the evaluation. But we start there, and once we kind of look at their passive flexibility, active, mobility, flexibility, the power numbers, some, FMS type of stuff as far as like the screening movements we look at. We take all that information, their medical history, their goals into consideration, develop the programs from there just to make sure, we're hitting all the bases we need to do. And we get them going and progress them through as, carefully as we can every 3 to 5 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, changing the programs as they, get better and better.
It's awesome. It seems like super in depth. Is that the type of evaluations that they use with like some of the more like, let's say NFL and like their training coaches and stuff? Do you guys know, do they do similar assessments and that in depth and training programs, or is it usually more like one size fits all?
I'm sure it probably depends on the organization.
Yeah.
I would say
since they're training so many guys, it's probably hard to get as in depth as we do. Yeah. And we usually get the guys that are kind of interested, have had injuries and need that extra, attention to detail that they're not getting in a team setting, or are kind of going through their team programs and maybe not making improvements because something is missing specifically for them. Yeah, so
I agree. Yeah,
I would say it probably depends on the organization, but from what we've seen, there's just like so many. It's different if you're writing programs and looking at one person versus, a team of 100 guys, or even if you have like position specific, you still have a group. And if you only have an hour or 2 hours with their strength and conditioning, you got to do what you think is the priorities, and that probably misses a lot of, if someone's a little more imbalanced or is more prone to injury or just has had injuries in the past.
It's easy for those things to slip by.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense for sure. And you guys also use a lot of other modalities there too, right? Like if somebody comes in and you don't just, if they have certain limitations, what other sorts of modalities do you guys use that are find super helpful to help improve them?
We use a lot. We have some, basic training principles and nutrition principles that kind of build our program design and even go into our injury rehab as far as like getting people eating the right things. But then we've taken a lot of, different courses and certifications with soft tissue treatments as far as like fascia stretching. The most recent one we've done, functional range conditioning. As far as like our mobility techniques we'll use here and there depending on when they're appropriate, and then just trying to get them stronger in the right ways. And we always start everyone pretty basic in a general prep and kind of progress them through to get them as strong as we can before either they have a deadline where they have to leave, or if they're going to continue training with us, go into more advanced training protocols. But we kind of encompass everything from nutrition, corrective exercise, your basic strength movements are a core part of our programs. Olympic lifting, if they're an athlete or someone who's just interested in maybe doing that in the future. All absolutely. Those modalities.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So. Let's talk about nutrition a little bit more. I mean, I know just working with you guys for so many years, we've all kind of like played around with our macros and different food type things. And what is and we can kind of go into both of let's actually start there. Let's go into both of your individual stories of how you've kind of played around with nutrition with your own training and what improvements you've seen, or vice versa. What things have you seen when you are eating a certain way that haven't helped your training?
Okay. I'll start off. So regarding my history after college.
Can we talk about in college with your peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
Yeah. So
midnight feeding.
Oh my gosh.
The midnight feeding. Like, whoa, we've got to start there because that's the best.
It was brutal. 3-4 a.m. for years. I went from call it 210, 215, all the way up to over 300 pounds in a few years' time. I know, it's wild.
Met him when he was 305.
305.
Jesse was like, "Oh yeah,
that's a big boy.
Yep.
That's a lot of man right there.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's a lot of man right there.
I mean, naturally, my body wasn't really used to carrying that amount of weight around, and it definitely put a lot of pressure on me from physiological standpoint, and everything really got affected, from my lower body joints to my energy levels to just everything, and as soon as I finished playing, it was the easiest decision in the world to start eating healthy and try to lose as much of the weight, and specifically lose as much of the bad weight, the body fat, as I could. And that was really when I started getting exposed to the Poliquin principles. Took my BioSig level 1, this was back in 2007, and started kind of following the nutrition guidelines, nutrition principles that Charles Poliquin was promoting. So at the time it was kind of cutting down on the carbs, increasing protein levels a little bit, kind of getting exposed to a higher degree of healthy fats. And that was really what made a huge impact for me. So I went from, after I think my junior year of football, I played at around 300 pounds. My senior year, I came down a little bit. I was probably about 285, 290. And once I graduated from 285, I started cutting down and was able to knock off a pretty significant amount of weight pretty quickly, just by kind of manipulating my macronutrients, keeping the carbs relatively low. I wouldn't say necessarily as low as what your traditional ketogenic diet would prescribe, but definitely under 100 grams per day. And it made some really significant progress for me for a long time, really. And I was able to get all the way down to probably 220, 225, following similar types of kind of macro splits for years. And then, once I kind of got to that level, I definitely hit some plateaus along the way where I made some minor modifications. But for me specifically, the lower carbohydrate, the higher protein, and the kind of moderate levels of healthy fats has been really impactful from a standpoint of not just obviously improving body composition, but energy levels feel great. My training has never really had or seen any sort of negative impact from not eating a lot of carbs, which I know a lot of exercise physiologists and sports nutritionists will say that athletes have to eat carbohydrates and it has to be a huge component of their diet. And I think for some that definitely could be true. But for me personally, I always seem to respond really well to lower carbs, and I continue to get stronger and more powerful and faster and more explosive. And I'm now working on my Olympic lifts, and they continue to improve, and I continue to get stronger. And as of late, within the past year, I've definitely upped my carbohydrate consumption to a certain degree, but I've also increased my training volume too to kind of correspond with that. Yeah. So, that's how things have kind of manipulated a little bit, and I think I've definitely been able to kind of continue to make progress. But for a long time, low carb was very, very helpful for me.
Do you practice we'll go, yeah, Jess, I totally want to hear about yours too. But for Bobby, do you find that you do any like weekly carb ups or whatever, where you go kind of like way beyond what you normally would, and how that either affects your body composition or your training?
Yeah, no, I've totally played around with that too. In the past, I've done, very low carb during the week, and then, one day on the weekend, I'll significantly increase my carb consumption. And then I've also, just kind of level it out where, every day I've kind of increased my carb consumption as well. And I think the biggest thing for me, now that I've kind of hit where I think my body's probably relatively comfortable just kind of hanging out, is changing it every so often. I think doing the relatively lower carb during the week, and then having, one high carb refeed day, or even just one refeed meal, or maintaining a relatively kind of moderate amount of carbs throughout the week and the weekend, and kind of keeping things relatively even. Both, I think, have worked well for me. I think the biggest thing is just kind of undulating them a little bit, almost like how I would a training program, and I think getting kind of stuck on one specific nutrition program, I think has kind of caused my body to plateau to some degree. And I think modifying things and changing things and, like I said, kind of matching it to how my training is going and undulating a little bit has definitely given my body the ability to continue to make progress.
It's awesome. That's super cool.
Yeah,
Jessie, go for it.
I'll take the lead right off. I think, what he was saying is really important about, undulating your nutrition. Whether you're training or not training, it's important to keep changing up because, you're constantly your body's constantly changing. Hormones are changing. Based on my personal experience, when I first started learning about nutrition, a lot from Bobby at first, especially because it wasn't always in strength and conditioning, started in kind of the business field and realized I was more interested in what he was doing than what I was doing. When I made the switch, started really learning about nutrition. I did the low carb, high protein thing that he was doing, and it worked really well. Felt great, got leaner. This was after college where it's just a free for all. So probably any improvement in my diet would have made results.
We didn't get to talk about your college years of eating and how much they've changed.
I didn't think about, anything. You just eat whatever. Everything's great. Drink whatever. Yeah. So when I got a job and started getting smart about nutrition, pretty much whatever, I think if I would have just eaten a little better, I would have gotten results. But the low carb thing worked great. I was getting into strength and conditioning and trying different training programs. I was getting stronger. And then I definitely hit a plateau with the low carb thing and just kind of stayed the same. And then when we actually opened up our facility and stress levels were pretty high and hours were long, it definitely took a toll. I was getting stricter and stricter with my carb intake, eating clean, not deviating from anything, and just nothing was happening. In fact, the opposite. My body composition was not improving. Weight was going up, not to any extremes, but definitely a significant noticeable amount, which made me kind of look into nutrition further and get really passionate about macronutrients and nutrient timing and nutrient deficiencies. And, you kind of get obsessed and throw yourself into it to learn everything. And then totally kind of switched as far as adding a lot of carbohydrates back in, clean sources. So my body kind of, I think, wanted something different. And then I've been sticking with that for a little while, playing around with nutrient timing and carbohydrates. But again, just thinking about lifestyle and stress in your training programs and having to change up. It can't be like I'm all paleo all the time, or I'm all keto all the time, or I'm just going to eat clean. You have to kind of listen to your body and eat healthy always as far as clean foods, but you might have to play around with nutrient timing and macronutrient profile specifically. Yeah, that's what I'm learning. That's pretty much what I've discovered about nutrition. It's always changing, and you need to listen to what your body kind of wants at the time.
Yeah, and when we say carbohydrates, we're pretty much.
I was there's only a few.
Yeah, literally.
I was just gonna ask you guys, go into what your clean carbohydrates are. People are like, "Oh, bread. Okay, cool."
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Jesse eats bread, so I can do it.
Pretty much. We eat a lot of purple sweet potatoes. A lot of purple sweet potato. Purple specifically.
A lot of vegetables are given.
Of course. Some root vegetables, parsnips, carrots, apples, berries during the summer.
Occasionally some oats,
gluten-free oats,
some rice here or there if it's the only thing kind of accessible for in a pinch. But other than that, we keep it pretty.
That's pretty much it.
Clean.
And then some post-workout carbs. We'll put some, some powdered carbs in our shake. We use Vitargo for that. And that's literally the vast majority of the carbs that we consume. Yeah.
So I have a million things that I want to ask after you were talking, Jessie. But one of the first ones is I think it's so important to talk about just how stress, no matter how strict you are getting, it's if you're stressed out, your body is just not changing. Right?
It's crazy.
It is.
And you can get, dialed in with everything and it just won't budge. It's crazy.
It's amazing. Yeah.
And so what kind of things do you do when you're in that, either to reduce stress or, because, the summit is kind of all about the mind-body connection, right? And how one thing helps to improve the other and just that everything isn't so separate. So that's just the best example ever of how stress can pretty much wreck any sort of nutrition and training. And so what kind of things did you find helpful? And maybe it was just increasing your carbs. I mean, that could be a huge thing, but what else did you find was helpful for you?
I think for both of us, we started to notice, even, when we were regular training, like getting a workout in and eating well, that something was a little bit wrong. I think we just started making sleep more of a priority as one of our first changes before we even got into like the carbohydrate and nutrient stuff.
Which is huge and so underestimated.
Just like trying to fix that. Okay, let's fix our sleep issues and try and decompress at night and like not be so stressed out. And then also we started just saying no to some things, to take some downtime instead of spreading ourselves really thin. And once we kind of started to see progress with those things, that's when we started playing around with our nutrients a little bit. And instead of doing like a hardcore no carb for, a week and then going a huge day where we kind of like blow it out, we kind of just kind of even keeled, like let's set some, macronutrient goals. Because as far as like once you, I think, are eating clean and you have a great diet and you're doing the right things with your lifestyle, you can start dialing into those things a little bit. Like program design, you start from beginning general principles, like eat these foods, don't eat these, and then you kind of have to get very specific as you get more dialed in. So we just started tracking and paying attention, loading carbs later in the day or having them after our workouts. And we noticed we kind of felt a little more relaxed at night, doing fats and protein in the morning when we're kind of like need to be up at 6 a.m. with appointments, just kind of playing around with what our bodies wanted and what also made us feel better and less stressed out and ready for the day or ready for a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I would say so.
So kind of slow transition into nutrient timing, but just small improvements along the way, I think, too. Yeah,
I'd say that was our biggest challenge, too, was trying to overcome how significant the impact of the stress really was from just a general health standpoint to our, training and performance and body composition standpoint. And, despite the fact that Jessie and I continued to eat relatively healthy when we were originally opening up our business 5 or 6 years ago, we both put on a very significant amount of weight, and it was not good weight at all. And looking back at it now, kind of retrospectively, we know that, like Jessie mentioned, you can continue to eat, in a relatively healthy manner, and you can continue to train on a semi-regular basis, but controlling the stress and getting the sleep and, kind of limiting the negative impact that the stress can have on your body was
a huge
paramount. Yeah, I would say. And it took a very long time and very significant kind of proactive approach on our part to, like Jessie said, I mean, we work, we come home, we cook dinner, we cook for the next day, we pack our bags and we go to sleep. And that's pretty much the regular routine. On the weekends, we've essentially gone from, going out to dinner, going out with friends every Saturday night, to now it's more of our regular routine to just kind of hang out at home and rest and recover and try and really focus on doing the things that we need to make sure that we're sleeping well and keeping our stress levels low. And it's had a pretty significant impact on our lives. Thank God we're able to do it together. It was unfortunate that we both had to go through the negative aspects together, but
totally.
I think it kind of allowed us to both realize how important it is to make our health a priority. And, I think we've finally gotten to the point now where we can not necessarily have the social pressures of doing the things that people think they need to do to be social. We're fortunate that we have a good relationship with I would say a great relationship with one another. And we don't feel that it's necessary for us to go out and party and stay out late and drink. And not that we don't enjoy a glass or two of wine every once in a while. We certainly do. But that was probably the biggest thing for both of us was kind of releasing ourselves from the social pressures of, no longer doing things just because people thought we should be doing them, That was a huge part in our recovery, I think.
Huge part in our recovery, for sure.
Literally.
That's huge. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's really helpful for people, especially, I'm sure, it sucks that you had to go through that, but now you have this other perspective for when you have clients coming in who, you guys are in Chicago, which is, I lived there for 14 years. It's very high-paced, or fast-paced, I should say. You could literally walk out your door and there's a million amazing restaurants with lots of wonderful bottles of wine. And so you have these clients who are sort of burning the candle at both ends, want to train really hard and working their asses off and partying on the weekends, and are like looking at you guys like, hey, why am I not seeing a result? And now you have this whole other perspective on it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. We definitely learned a ton. And played around with so many things to try and find the answers. So it sucked going through it, but definitely it's made us better trainers, coaches, better at doing nutrition with people, and just like
better individuals
overall.
Yeah.
And and then when we do our evaluations with clients, and they kind of give us an idea of like what their goals are, what their lives are, I feel like we have a good idea of what we need to do with them that's different from what we would do with someone else. Who might not have that much stress in their lives, or everyone's, starts different with like training age and nutrition. So it's really given us a good, it's helped us with our clients as well to improve the service that we can give to them, which has been really good.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's so awesome. Let's talk a little bit more about hormones with training and just why you might do higher carb post-workout. What's going on in the body, why the body can use those carbohydrates so efficiently post-workout, and even when you decide to do them at night, what the importance of that is.
Okay. I'll take this first one. I used to never take carbs post-workout. I'd be like, powdered carbs in your shake? Absolutely not. Why would you do that? And then obviously getting into the physiology, once I, learned the physiology, and I would give it to, my athletes all the time, like put carbs in your shake, but personally I never did it. And then once I kind of started playing around with that, I noticed a huge improvement in my body composition and recovery the next day, even for my energy levels during the day in the morning before I would train. So you're obviously very insulin sensitive after a workout. Great time to have some post-workout carbs. We use the Vitargo, just because it digests really well, and you can get a good 35 to 70 grams in pretty easily with 1 or 2 scoops. Definitely improves, helps like the pathways with muscle protein synthesis, replenishing muscle glycogen that might be lost, possibly liver glycogen, depending on, how many carbohydrates you're eating other times during the day. But definitely helps with recovery and just starts the process. And sometimes it's hard for someone to eat if they are training pretty hard or pretty lean, and you're like, oh, I have to eat 200 grams of carbs a day. Sometimes it's like hard to do. So the powdered carbs really are helpful for us. And then as far as loading carbohydrates later in the day, just increasing serotonin, dopamine, those kind of feel good neurotransmitters later in the day, that kind of helps settle you down, is just what we found works really well.
Yeah, literally. That's exactly it.
Not necessarily dopamine, but serotonin. Boosting dopamine during the workout and then increasing serotonin with some carbs. But you're kind of using that window after your workout and then later in the day as times where they're useful and your body can actually use them versus like starting the day with them has been helpful for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You said it'd be better. Yeah, for sure.
Perfect. I was also going to ask, Jess, are you racing right now or training for races?
I am. I did a couple indoor meets, and then right now I'm just kind of training, upping my volume again, training, waiting for outdoor to start like mid-April. So yeah, I'm officially in it. I'm excited for this summer. So
cool.
Yeah.
What is the difference I'm sure you've noticed some just because your nutrition has changed so much since college, but give us a little background on how you raced and what you did when you were in college. And even though it's been years since you've been in college, like the difference when you train now or use strength training or nutrition and how it's different.
Okay. In college, was 200 and 400 meter runner as well as a high jumper. Now post-college, I've just turned into really focusing on the 400. But in college, I think you're with a team, you run, you do the workouts, you go, lift, quote unquote. I definitely wasn't as into strength and conditioning, definitely the strength part in college as I am now. So, you kind of go with the team and do everything in college. And I didn't really think about, our programming too much. But now, 12 years later, I'm getting a little smarter with it. I'm significantly stronger, which has made, I can only get to the track, once a week, once every 2 weeks. So maintaining my strength has been key to just like get on the track and maintain a high intensity there. Like, okay, I need to do short sprints. I did not need to not pull my hamstring. So being injury free and feeling pretty good and strong when I go to the track, I definitely attribute to just focusing on strength training and really, at high intensities, very heavy loads has been really key in my training to get back on the track. And then also on the track, I don't need, since I've done it for so long now, I don't need tons of volume of repeats and runs, and just really dialing in my speed and technique and doing a few reps at, really, as fast as I can or really high intensities has been pretty key. And it's also helped improve my body comp, and it gets me, out of lifting. And I feel like that combination too has been really good mentally and exciting for training.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And I've learned a lot too with respect to, I guess, volume in the gym. And then when you're training an athlete, you can't forget that they need to perform on the track or the field. And you can't focus all on strength, and you can't just think that what you do in the weight room is the only thing that's important. Mm-hmm. So it's reinforced that too to me, like always consider what someone's doing outside the gym, if it's their sport or even life tasks in general. So that's been really important, I guess, as far as learning not only how to program for track and field or speed and power development, but considering the other training that they're doing as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I think, too, it's interesting just for women to hear that you lift really heavy and you stay lean. So I think, and you're fast. And I think it's like backwards for so many women, and like what we're taught of like, oh, let's do lots of reps, and because I like to run, or I'm doing a 5K or whatever it is, where you're like, yeah, no, I lift heavy and I'm not, like explain a little bit about like busting those myths. I think that would be just awesome.
Yeah. No, women are definitely in the, I want to, lots of reps, lightweight, and I'm going to do cardio. I'm going to go run 3 to 5 miles or longer. I definitely have found, I was definitely in a, part of my training when I was doing, higher, 15 reps or whatever it is, low rest, everything kind of at a lower intensity, 70 to 75%, and made some improvement there. But as your training age increases, and I think women don't really understand that, they think they can do that forever and always make the results they want, and they're going to be long and lean, and they don't want to bulk up. But you need to vary your training, and you're going to need those phases where you go into, 5x3 or, whatever it is, like lower, but the weight needs to be heavy. Not only you need to maintain lean muscle mass. I actually got leaner when I started doing lower reps and like longer rest. I feel like my body needed a little bit with the other, life and stress. I feel like it was good. 3 reps, rest 2 minutes. I had a positive hormonal response, and I actually was able to get leaner with the less volume I was doing. And I think increasing muscle mass for women and increasing bone density is definitely like an anti-aging, there's an anti-aging component to it that I think women don't understand. And I'm getting away from what I'm saying.
No, that's so good. It's all great.
Definitely. And like sprinting instead of always doing distance running, you need to change it up. And I think that women are afraid sometimes to lift heavy and sprint hard because they're afraid to bulk, or it's working too hard, or they don't need to do that. But it really kind of, it changes, it increases your, motor abilities. There's more benefits to it than, just light weights and distance running, I think.
Yeah. Too, it's important for a lot of women to realize also that like the stigma of women in strength training and women bulking up. First off, I mean, you probably know more about this than we do, Nicole, but women really don't have the capabilities of getting that bulky. I mean, from a hormonal standpoint, you know, women cannot really produce a ton of testosterone. They produce a tiny bit of testosterone through their adrenal glands, and that's about it. Whereas obviously guys produce testosterone through other male areas and significantly more, a higher degree of testosterone as well. And, you know, that's a huge component. I mean, testosterone is anabolic. It stimulates your body to go through the process of protein synthesis. Women don't really have that. So, you know, of course, there are other things that can create that sort of a stimulation for protein synthesis as well. But for the majority of women, you know, strength training isn't as much about bulking as it is about getting stronger and being healthy and increasing bone density and decreasing potential for osteoporosis and osteopenia. And, you know, a lot of women, they want to go out and be able to run 5Ks, you know, if they're into fitness and training and those sorts of things. They want to be able to go out and hike or you know, whatever. And at the core of all physical abilities, you'll find strength. Always. There is no one physical ability that impacts everything else as much as strength does, you know. And from a standpoint of them not getting injured, you know, again, the common denominator is how strong are you? And I think, you know, some women have had the unfortunate circumstance of, you know, getting bulky from training, but what they're really probably getting bulky from is, yeah, they start training, but they don't change anything else about their lives, right? They're still going out, they're still eating in an unhealthy manner, they're still drinking, they're still
not sleeping or
exactly staying up way later than they probably should. So of course they're not going to improve body comp, of course they're not going to drop body fat percentage, and of course they're still going to be inflamed, and that's going to present itself as being bulky, but really it's nothing more than all of those other things just not improving, you know. And I think we can probably both attest to seeing tons of women time and time again, once they realize that they need to kind of change the whole package and not just focus on the training, but do every other aspect of making themselves healthier, they make very significant improvement in body composition and, you know, decreasing body fat percentage and getting overall just healthier from doing a lot of strength training, you know. And that could be very heavy strength training. And I think we can both probably agree that there are many women that are still very feminine, have still very lean and, you know, feminine type body shapes that do a ton of training and are really, really strong. And, you know, I think it's just an unfortunate stigma that comes along with the strength training, but I think it's unjustified.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. You explained that totally perfectly, which is great. Nice work, both of you. But thanks. I think it's so true. I think women still think like, okay, if I want to get in shape for something, I'm just going to run a lot. I'm going to restrict my calories a ton, and I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve. And it's like, oh boy, how many times do we see that just like does not work?
It backfires. Yeah. And then they put themselves in hormonal disarray, right? And
absolutely.
It's really tough to get themselves out of that hole.
Oh my gosh. And then their thyroid goes down because they're restricting their calories, and it's just a whole mess. Do you guys have just like super basic guidelines that you give your clients when they start training with you for food? Or is it, and if you can share just a couple of those with us?
Yeah, they're pretty basic. We do have everyone that starts up, we have like a general manual that has a couple pretty general guidelines. But depending on the person, I'd say it's something we kind of tell everyone. I'll just go, you know, sometimes we give them a protein goal or not a protein goal, but keeping protein as a priority in your diet, especially when you start training, keeping it relatively high. It's definitely one of the ones we tell everyone. Staying away, I would say, from like eating not processed foods, you know, actual real foods that grow on things and aren't in boxes would be something we tell everyone. what are a couple ones? Protein,
those are
no processed foods. Those are the two biggest ones.
Those by far. If you're doing those two things, I mean, you're 90% of the way there, you know?
If someone needs to, you know, if they're coming in to bulk up and gain weight, one of the things, right? Okay, like let's start, you know, high protein, not processed foods. Okay, let's add some clean carbs. If someone's coming in to lose weight, just getting them to eat protein and non-processed foods might be enough, you know, not adding any additional
supplements or anything,
carbs or anything like that, whether it be post-workout or even, you know, throughout the day. But those are probably the two biggest ones
by far. And I think that's
for sure
one of the biggest issues that people have is just not doing their own shopping, not going to the grocery store and, you know, buying and just it doesn't even take that much. Just do a little bit of research and, you know, find out where you can get good, healthy, clean sources of meats, you know, good, healthy, organic, grass-fed meats and good types of fish and, you know, good free-range eggs and produce and organic produce and those sorts of things, you know. And a lot of people think that just because, you know, they go to the store and something maybe says that it's healthy, but it's packaged, that it still could be healthy. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's never going to be quite as healthy as just, you know, getting something that has not been processed and fresh vegetables and fresh fruit and fresh produce and organic meats and those sorts of things. And I think if everyone could literally just follow those guidelines, maybe eat a little bit more protein and try and stick only to non-processed foods, I think that we could probably solve many of the major health issues that are going on.
I will say, you're reminding me of something, a new thing in my nutrition sessions with clients. I used to not really think too much if someone, when we would talk about nutrition and food quality and people would be like, yeah, I'm eating veggies and everything. I'm starting to ask whether they're cooking these items or if they're always going out, because I'm finding if you go, you know, to even a nice restaurant, you go to a steakhouse, you get a steak, and you get some veggies, it's covered with oil, or the marinade they marinate the steak in has soy and gluten or other things in it that, you know, aren't apparent on the menu. It just seems like a steak and some, you know, sauteed spinach or broccoli, whatever it might be. But someone who's very sensitive to those things or, you know, not very gifted genetically with processing nutrients is definitely gonna be like, I'm eating vegetables and meat all the time. What's happening? So I'm starting to require people that do nutrition with me they have to cook a majority of their meals at home, because that's been something I've found gets in the way too. With our busy lives, people, you know, have meal services and they order out, but they're still not home cooking and
Yeah.
No, that's huge.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm starting to require more people to start cooking home. I think non-processed foods and making them yourself is huge.
It is, yeah. I think unfortunately a big part of it is there, at least in Chicago, there's been a ton of like pre-prepared meal companies that have come out within the past several years. And, you know, all is fine. I think as long as their principles are to try and get people to eat healthier, I think that's okay. But at the end of the day, those companies survive on trying to make meals as palatable as possible, you know. So first and foremost, they want their meals to taste really good so that they can hopefully sell to as broad a clientele list as possible. Whereas their main goal might not necessarily be to make the healthiest meals possible. They want to make the best tasting meals possible, you know. So I think there's a very distinct difference between you know, wanting to eat healthy and making your own food with the specific goal of, I'm doing this to eat as healthy as possible. Whereas somebody else making that food for you, they want to continue to sell you food. So they're going to try and make it taste good. And that might come at the expense of making it healthy.
Oh, absolutely. Or like if an oil is like canola oil versus olive oil, it's like people don't understand what a massive difference that makes in the body.
Precisely.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, and a little bit here and there. It's like, I think too with nutrition and cooking at home, and you need to like control, when you can control it. Because when you go out, everyone's going to go out, you know, we live in the, you know, world we live in, and it's just going to make the times where if you're like, oh, it's in canola oil.
Big
whatever.
deal.
I do this 3 times a year or what, you know what I mean? It makes it not a big deal. But if you're always eating out,
you do it 3 times
you never kind of know what you're getting. And
yeah, for sure.
You think you're doing the eating clean, but you're really not, which kind of sucks. But, yeah, control what you can control and cook at home when you can, and then eat out when you really have to, or kind of when you're in a pinch.
Yeah.
I love that. Guys, this was so great.
This was great.
Thank you so much for giving us all this amazing knowledge about nutrition and training and your own personal journeys, because it's been cool to see. I mean, we've been friends for a while, but just to even see what you guys have tweaked and how it's affected your bodies and your happiness, and it's just awesome. So it's so cool.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks so much for wanting to have us on and giving us this opportunity to talk. Yeah, this is great.
Yay. Okay, thanks. And I'll definitely list a bunch of information on the website so people can find you if they want to. And so, yeah, thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
See you soon.